So I will be talking more about the disclosures, especially on the pre-award side, what is expected when the PI is preparing their proposal, and when we get what we call JIT requests, just-in-time requests from NIH, or any other sponsor request after the proposal is submitted. So as we talked about, we know that there is a growing concern in the US. One moment. There is a growing concern in the US about undue foreign influence. You've heard that phrase used a lot. And we did describe that we're really looking at the activity. That's where the monitoring, the analysis, where the checks and balances, where the controls will be put in place, the activity of our GW community and who we are doing that activity with. So we know the US government has raised their concerns and put different policies and procedures in place through our federal agencies as a matter to protect intellectual property, our federally funded research, our research data, and these concerns will continue to be addressed over time. So just to give you a snapshot of the problem, these are some findings that were reported by the NIH, and I'm sure these numbers have changed because, as you can see, this data was last reported in September 2020, and we're now into 21. So different areas about failure to disclose, about working with a foreign talent program or receiving foreign grant funds, 9% hit ties related to a foreign company, and actually 5% were involved with violation of NIH peer review. So it is a serious issue. I just want to re-emphasize that disclosures impacting pre-award should include all conflicts of interest, foreign affiliations that impact your research endeavors, conflicts of commitment, as well as other support. So I know we're running out of time a little bit, but I will try to be as swift as possible. It's important that we look at disclosures for key personnel, right? Because that's where NIH is looking as our leaders for scientific and technical research. They're expecting anyone who's identified as key personnel to have these proper disclosures. So we'll briefly take a look at other support from NIH and DoD. Recently, NIH made some changes to their other support format. NSF, as you know, they call their other support current and pending support. We'll talk a little bit about affiliations and appointments and other inclusions as applicable. So Francis Collins did come out with a memo stating a pledge from the NIH. And this pledge is what has been the motivation to update their Biosketch instructions, as well as their other support instructions. Of course, looking at number 2 specifically, the idea is to mitigate the risk to intellectual property security, research data, while we still continue our collaborations, whether they are domestic or foreign. So for the NIH, they recently, as I said, made changes to the Biosketch and other support instructions. They did clarify their expectations. They did make updates to the forms and what is acceptable to align more with NSF in order to reduce the administrative burden. And this was, again, prompted from guidance from the Office of Science and Technology, the Joint Committee on Research Environments, also known as JCOR. I'm not sure why my cursor is sticking. Okay, here we go. So for the NIH Biosketch updates, NIH now requires the NIH Biosketch to be prepared using ScienceCV. This should be submitted with application submissions, your just-in-time responses, as well as your progress reports, your research performance progress reports, RPPR. This was recently, of course, issued, and the date for starting to use the Science CV NIH Biosketch was May 25th. You will notice that it's not required until January 25th, 2022, and that is reflected in the notice guide. So NIH is giving us a huge period, what I call a grace period, to understand what the new instructions are, understand the expectations, and to fully understand the implications when we don't follow the instructions. If the biosketch is not submitted in the correct format in this grace period, NIH will exercise leniency. However, on and after January 25th, failure to follow the appropriate biosketch format will cause NIH to withdraw your application from consideration. Now here it does say may cause, because again, I'm not the NIH, that is their decision. But of course, with proposals, we always encourage our researchers to follow the sponsor's instructions. So here is a link here about the biosketch format, instructions, and some samples. So NIH Other Support, this was the area that had the most change. The updated NIH Other Support format for just-in-time and your progress reports, again, can be used as early as May 25th and will be required on and after January 25th, 2022. The Science CV template for Other Support will be available beginning in fiscal year 22, but the updated Other Support format is now in use. So they did make some changes specifically to Section D and specifically related to biosketches for fellowships. So please pay close attention to that. Again, there's a grace period. Failure to follow the appropriate NIH Other Support format required on and after January 25th, 2022 may cause NIH to withdraw your application from consideration. And here we have a link with more information about the NIH Other Support. So I do want to emphasize what will be effective January 25th, 2022. NIH will require Other Support to be electronically signed prior to submission as an interim process while NIH moves to the use of Science CV. This template, remember, will be available fiscal year 2022. Other support, supporting documentation. We will be required to include copies of contracts, agreements specific to key personnel. Senior key personnel, we use those terms interchangeably. For foreign appointments and or employment with a foreign institution for all foreign activities and resources that are reported in the Other Support. If the contracts agreements are not in English, recipients must provide translated copies to the NIH. Immediate notification of undisclosed Other Support. When a recipient organization discovers that a PI or other senior key personnel on an active NIH grant failed to disclose Other Support information using just-in-time or the progress report as applicable, the recipient must submit an updated Other Support to the GMS, the Grants Management Specialist that is named in the award, as soon as the information becomes available. I do want to emphasize this period, the grace period, May 25 through January 25th. Keep in mind the NIH may request GW to provide copies of agreements or contracts, etc., related to foreign activities and foreign resources prior to January 22 if necessary. So again, when they're reviewing your entire application for peer review, the biosketch, your other support, your devoted commitment of effort, your publications, all these things come into play. And if they notice either discrepancies or they have knowledge of information that they did not see disclosed, they may come back and ask for those contracts. Frequently asked questions on other support and foreign components. This was last updated in July. I'm not going to take a lot of time to read the slide, but I do just want to emphasize carefully review the definition for a foreign component. There are two criteria that must be met in order for your activities to be considered a foreign component. And so the first one is if the project or activity is being performed outside of the US, and then you, the researcher, has to determine if those activities are considered significant. Remember, significant, it can be subjective, but again, NIH has clarified their definition that they're expecting disclosures for all research endeavors and any resources supporting that. If both criteria are met, then yes, there is a foreign component. We have a list here of some examples of activities that might be considered significant. And of course, collaborations with investigators at a foreign site anticipated to result in co-authorship. Use of facilities or instrumentation at a foreign site. Receipt of financial support or resources from a foreign entity. Here are some reminders. Again, other support includes all financial resources, whether federal, non-federal, commercial, or institutional, available in direct support of an individual's research endeavors, including, but not limited to, research grants, cooperative agreements, contracts, and/or institutional awards. Training awards, prizes, or gifts do not need to be included. The next bullet, I have some links here with additional information related to other support, so make sure you check those out. What is NIH looking for when they review your other support? So here we have a link which has more information. But the NIH scientific program and grants management staff review the other support information to ensure all resources, domestic or foreign, directly supporting the individual's research endeavors have been reported, have been disclosed. Sufficient levels of effort are committed to the project. There is no scientific, budgetary, or commitment overlap. Only funds necessary to the approved project are included in the award. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on NSF because NSF updated their definition for current and pending and their expectations in October 2020. So we've had more time and we all should be fully vested and fully implemented with using the NSF formats. To be brief, the two formats that are acceptable, required for NSF current and pending support are using Science CV, of course. The other is what they call a PDF fillable form. I have found we do have a combination of usage from both Science CV as well as the PDF fillable format. And here are some tips for completing the NSF current and pending support. I do just want to plug here that NSF is expecting the new PAPPG 21-1 to be released sometime soon, but it will be implemented effective, I believe, in October 2021. So here again is a list of tips to report. Here are some helpful links. Again, the guidance page for NSF, current and pending support, information on Science CV, as well as the NSF fillable PDF. Again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on DoD. They have not made any what we consider recent changes as far as their expectations for reporting for key personnel. So here's a complete list. Please take a look at that when you receive the slides. I just want to briefly report that the Federal Demonstration Partnership is working very closely with federal agencies on the behalf of universities to make sure that the administrative burden is reduced, that instructions are clear, procedures are clear, and that even though we're expanding our reach for analysis, review, and disclosures, that we're trying to really be consistent and transparent. There is still a need for harmonization. As you know, each federal agency has a different definition or different instructions for their expectations when disclosing. So that is another big area for focus, harmonization, bringing more of the federal agencies in line with their instructions around disclosures. So I just want to briefly point out the conflict of commitment is any time a researcher is dedicating time to personal activities in excess of the time permitted by GW, their institution, or to other activities that may detract the researcher from his or her primary responsibilities to GW. And this can be research projects, teaching, mentoring, or institutional committees and boards. This is a matrix that was discussed in a breakout session, and FDP will continue to update this matrix as time goes on. I'm now going to turn it over to Alma, who will talk about post-award and undue foreign influence.